Uh, this is a poem called Ruminative Rubai. These final days as they appear to be, finding ourselves knee-deep in misery, with COVID running rampant everywhere, a world in which nobody can agree. If we're not up in arms, we're mad as hell about a lot of things. It's hard to tell exactly where we're going at this point, except for what we've got to buy and sell. For business is still good. The bottom line, as long as you've got yours and I've got mine, it doesn't matter, as the saying goes. If we've got money, everything is fine. But this does not convey the full effect of what's confronting us, what's got us fucked. The earth's in trouble, ecologically, with human beings as the prime suspect. It's hard for me to know where to begin as I set out. There's so much seated sin in the way that society is run, beginning with the everlasting din that keeps us ever revved up and awake for money, 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 money's sake. Buy this, buy that, the cry must always be. The world, it says, is there for you to take. Compounding this, of course, the air we breathe, laced as it is with exhaust, human need, at this stage well exceeds its furthest throw, or should I underline it, human greed. We've lost much of what made of life a feast. When we were young, how often we felt blessed by simple things, by what we found at hand, before greed entered like a raging beast. The world was simpler then, or so we thought. We went to Mass and found where we had sought an answer to life's main perplexities, till we ignored the lessons that were taught. The parable about excessive wealth was not exactly something that we felt pertained to us. Besides a few things more, the word at times cut too close for our health. Of course, the seeds were there already sown for our destruction. If only we had known. The church was not, at times, how it appeared, and the financial juggernaut had grown to gain predominance, to have full sway, till what you see is what you get today, with money being the prime progenitor of all our ills, whatever people say. Jeff Bezos at this moment comes to mind, who strives to see and yet is plainly blind, who took himself aloft the earth to view, forgetting what he really left behind. He saw a vast terrain, we must assume, half gowned in light and half in verdant gloom, a space in which his ego might expand and have, for a brief while, a bit more room. He saw, as from an exalted tower, a realm in which he might expend his power, a limitless expanse, to say the least, not how it might be made to bloom and flower. Of course, he's no exception in all this. Relating how much things have gone amiss must take into account what's gone before, nor think one person the sole cause of this. Looking back through the history of man up to the time when modern life began, with the invention of the motor car, we see that life persisted as a plan to gain more room. In other words, expand, to find what might be had on either hand. Guided by certain precepts we held dear, we travelled freely over sea and land. Our arrogance to lord it o'er the earth brought many sorry sights and things to birth. With profit always upmost in our minds, we judged each thing by how much it was worth. But then there were exceptions, as I said, who wakened to the danger straight ahead and tried to tell us, in our mad pursuits, just where it was that we were being led. Exceptions, when from time to time we found some little grain of light, if not profound, at least something to show we were not lost, that way deep down our values were still sound. But they were not enough, as must be plain, as if we only worked with half a brain. Our path continued in the current mode. We loved to live our lives in the fast lane. Pollution, plastic, followed close behind. Not only were we brain dead, we were blind, as must be surely obvious by now to anyone who brings it all to mind. Pollution full of factories, poured from factories full of filth, as we look back, must fill us full of guilt, with global warming ever on our minds. We look around and see what we have built. Soulless suburbs, highways without end, long leagues of land dividing friend from friend, where there is nothing likely to be seen but billboards broadcasting the latest brand. The whole thing is enough to make you sick, especially when you think of all the plastic that we, in our insanity, must maintain to keep our products looking neat and slick. It's clogging up the waterways, the seas, and poisoning the planet by degrees. The fact it makes us money is the thing that keeps it going, no matter who agrees. The fact that we love money most of all is what's behind what must with time appall the planet's slow dissolving into ruin, unless we face the challenge, make the call. Which gets me to the main point of my spiel, to those in charge who like to wheel and deal, the politicians proved in double talk, who are mostly all the same come woe and weal. How some gain office is a mystery, as anyone can very plainly see, when we observe unfolding bit by bit what soon becomes a part of history. Their frequent bungling, their incompetence, make us wonder when they'll get some sense, though they are hardly likely at this rate, with money being their prime recompense. Except for one or two, the cause is lost for those rare folk who reckon not the cost of what it is that they set out to do. We hold our breath, we keep our fingers crossed. And yet it is the small things matter most. When we get down to it, the garbage tossed on the sidewalk by folk like you and me tells very plainly why I think we're lost. The man or woman who can't see beyond the present instant to something more profound, the consequence of our actions here and now, will not, I fear, be very long around. Unless we can stop thinking as we do, instead of me to think of me and you, there's not much future for the human race. As far as I can see, this still holds true. Which brings me back to where I first began, the unresolved conundrum that is man, the long abiding gap twixt heaven and hell, and where we're going as a final plan.